Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today, I'd like to talk about your local comic shop. Hopefully, somebody who owns a comic shop might actually get to listen to this. So I'm going to try to talk directly to them, but more likely is that just comic readers and comic shop patrons are going to be listening to this. So maybe we can bring these kind of ideas to the attention of our comic shop owners. Because I'll tell you right now that the SJWs are coming for your local comic shop. They are coming for it, and they are going to close it down. And to go into why they want to do this and go into how they're going to do this, I have to take a couple of steps backwards and look at the big picture for a little bit. So hopefully you can bear with me in looking at the big picture. Because I listened to a really good video from just some guy not too long ago, and he is talking about when you're dealing with SJWs, you're not fighting against that person in particular. You're fighting against the ideology that is holding them up. Okay, they're not the ones who are against you. It's the ideology that's holding them up. So we got to go into a little bit of the ideology. Okay, so SJWs are basically leftist, socialist, communist kind of people. And they are the useful idiots of the socialist communist left. That's an actual political theory term. They're the useful idiots. All right, so to take another step back farther, and I'll go really quickly over this. Well, what's the whole deal with socialist communist left? Well, their whole deal is that they think that the only utopia that you can ever have is here on Earth. So they try to make it here on Earth. And they think that people are basically good, that all evil comes into the world through bad institutions, and the worst institution of all is capitalism. So capitalism needs to be destroyed and replaced with communism. There will need to be, in the process, it'll have to be replaced first by socialism, and then it'll take over completely, and then you'll have communism. And the only way that you can do this, the only way that this will happen is through revolution. Violent revolution. It's part of their ideology. The only way that it can happen is through violent revolution. So they want to build this utopia on Earth through first having to go through a violent revolution. And this worked fairly well for them in the first half of the 1900s. But by the time it got to be about 1950, 1960, they saw that their movement had sort of stalled. So they tried to pick a new way in order to foster the revolution throughout the world. And they did so through promoting a very specific kind of intellectualism. And it was called, from the Frankfurt School, it was called critical theory. And critical theory, in its most basic form, to tell you about it, is that you criticize something until it falls apart. Basically, it's the very opposite of constructive criticism. It's destructive criticism. So you hammer at something with criticism until it is destroyed. When it's destroyed, then you replace it with socialism, which then leads to communism. So destruction, already part and parcel of the package, right there. And they will leave this criticism and destruction up to the worker. Okay, they give it to the everyday guy, the useful idiots. And the SJWs are these useful idiots. And they work in a way that's very similar to guerrilla tactics. So the original communist kind of idea, it was kind of open warfare, trying to bring about revolution. A little bit more anyways. But when they got into this critical theory idea, it's more about guerrilla warfare. And I just want to read you something really quickly, and then I'll be done with this section and move on to your comic shop and on to what you probably came here to listen to. But so the idea of critical theory came about during the 60s, and this is communist documents from 1961. And to just listen to the word and how it plays into sort of a guerrilla tactic kind of mentality. It says, "The world of socialism is growing larger. The world of socialism is contracting. Socialism will inevitably take over from capitalism everywhere. Such is the objective law of the development of society. Marxism-Leninism has become the mighty ideological weapon of the revolutionary transformation of society. The successes of the struggle which the working class wages for the victory of the revolution will depend on how well the working class and its party master the use of all forms of struggle, peaceful and non-peaceful, parliamentary and extra-parliamentary, and how well they are prepared to replace one form of struggle by another as quickly and unexpectedly as possible. But whatever the form in which the transition from capitalism to socialism is effected, that transition can come about only through revolution. Okay, that's my end of the quote. So, it gives you a couple of very basic ideas that you should know about if you don't know about already. That socialism, it's supposed to lead to communism. And you can see this in polls out right now about, basically in the United States, the latest poll of younger people, I think it will be millennials, asking them about what systems that they would prefer. Only about 33% of people in that class actually support capitalism. And about 22% of them support socialism. These are your useful idiots. These are your SJW useful idiots. And their guerrilla tactics are, as what it says here, be prepared to move from one struggle to the next as quickly as possible. Strike. That's guerrilla warfare. Strike, retreat, strike, retreat. That's guerrilla warfare. Right there. It's ideological guerrilla warfare. So, to move on to your comic shops and why they are very susceptible to this, especially right now. They are susceptible to this to begin with, anyways, because in my experience, and I've heard this from a number of other people as well, in their experience, a lot of comic shop owners are already on the left. They're already on the left. They might not be hyper leftists, they might not be SJWs, they might not be socialist communists, but they're already on the left. So they're susceptible to being attacked. Because that doesn't make them immune from being attacked by the left. That actually makes them more susceptible to being attacked by the left. Because they're going to try to use them as useful idiots as well. And you can see it in a lot of the stuff that's going on in my local comic shop. I can certainly see it. There's two in my local town. And I can see it in these comic shops, in both of them. That there is a leftist bent to what they do there. And that needs to be gotten rid of. That needs to be gotten rid of completely. I ran a small business. These things are small businesses. At some point, you either got to make a decision of, I'm going to accept this loss and continue to accept this loss no matter what happens, even if it drives me out of business, or I'm going to treat everything economically and get rid of everything else. You're going to have to, it's going to split right down the line. You're going to have to make that decision. And these people in the comic shops who own the comic shops, they're not making the decision for economics. They're going the other way. And I know they're going the other way because they have these things in their shop that, as for me, as a person on the right, they kind of disturbed me. I don't want to see them there next to my comics. And if I had the exact copy of the comic shop that I normally go to right next door with none of these leftist trappings in it, I'd go to that one. So I'm telling them right now, if you're listening anyways, I'm telling you right now that you are priming your customers to being driven away. And the customers are the only ones who are going to support you. And if you're listening to this and you're on the left, I really doubt anybody on the left would probably be listening to this, but if you are, you're probably freaking out a little bit about, well, that's just the right pushing its agenda and you're just doing the things which you say you want out of comics. But I'll give you a little example if you're on the left, okay? Let's say you had a comic shop and it was also a religious bookstore. So it's a religious bookstore / comic shop. The very specific religious books that they sold, and everywhere you would go around your comic shop, you would see these religious items, very specific religious items, and they would be books and plaques and a whole bunch of things which basically say convert, convert, convert. You know, hidden in a corner here, on the table there, next to the cash register as you go to pay for your stuff. Convert. As a person on the left, would you feel comfortable going to this comic shop? Or would you say to yourself, if there's another comic shop that opens up right next door with none of this stuff, just a comic shop, I'll go there. Now, if you're on the left, I'm pretty sure that you'd go to the one that had none of this stuff. And I'm telling you right now that as a person on the right, when I go into my comic shop, that's what I feel like. I try to support these people because it's the only place that I can really get a lot of comics. But that's what I feel like when I go into my local comic shop. You have these books, pamphlets, little things on the desks, talking about how you can properly use Zix and Zim in your daily uses of speaking with people and all this kind of nonsense. Just little pamphlets. They're just like little religious pamphlets. Convert. That's what they are. And I'm telling you right now that if an apolitical store opened up right next door, they would lose all of my business. My original comic store would. And that's the key to what's going on now. Because your comic buyers, they are the only ones that are going to support you. They are the only ones that are going to support you. The industry is no longer going to support you. If it has supported you even for the last little while, I doubt it. They're not going to support you at all. Because of these SJWs and their guerrilla tactics. So again, to step a little bit backwards, to go into it economically, to go to the very basic economic plan, there's a little system that develops that everyone should be familiar with. You have demand. Demand goes and leads into manufacturing. Manufacturing leads into supply. Supply leads into distribution. Distribution fulfills the demand and it goes around in a circle. Basic economics. Okay? Now, when you have these leftist socialists kind of ideas and systems and their own little institutions, well, what they try to do is to set up a monopoly so that all of these things that I have just described are controlled by their monopoly, because they know very well that they can't compete. If there is someone who is competing with them in a very apolitical way, they just can't compete. They can't compete with that. They can't. It doesn't work for them because they're trying to inject other things into it and use their economics for another vehicle, which is taking some supplies and some of their resources and shoving them into places which are non-productive. Now, if you look at the comic industry right now, and let's take Richard Meyer as our example. He's a very good example of this and his situation and what's going on with him. So, your SJWs have set up their own comic institution because, well, basically they wish to destroy the idea of hero and all that, but you can go into my other videos to listen to that. But they set up their own monopoly, and they basically tried to keep that monopoly just standing and everyone else out of the game because they know they can't compete. But they would say to people like Richard Meyer, hey, listen, there's no demand for these things that you're talking about. You're talking about all of these things being apolitical and getting all this forced diversity, or they would just call it diversity, out of comic books. There's really no demand for that. You try and make your own comic and it'll just show you that there is no demand for this. So he went and made his own comic. And he put it online on his Indiegogo campaign and it took off because there is demand for this. And the same with Ethan Van Sciver and Cyberfog, it took off. And I'm sure in a couple of days, when Red Rooster goes online, it's going to take off all the way. Go Red Rooster. So, they lost control, the left lost control of this narrative, this idea that there is no demand. So, guerrilla tactics, they moved on to the next thing in line and attacked that. And that attack came on the manufacturing end of it. And the manufacturing end of it is comic writers and comic artists. Now, they've already had a stranglehold on that for a while, but they started to inject all of these ideas again and again, more and more, that comics is a club. Comics is a little niche thing where we all know each other. So guess what? If you want to ever get into this club, ever, you best do what we say. You better be of the right politics. You better do things the way we say that you do and not deal with these people over there. So they went after manufacturing. But to some degree that had already been lost, because John Malin had already agreed to do this book. And then they started losing more and more. Ethan Van Sciver left DC. You got people like Kelsey Shannon also doing stuff with diversity in comics now, with Richard Meyer. You already have now, again, you got Chuck Dixon. He's writing a Jawbreaker story, already written a Jawbreaker story, actually. So they lost manufacturing. They lost control of manufacturing. Even if it's just a little, they still lost control, which breaks their monopoly. So, guerrilla tactics, they moved on to the next thing in line. And the next thing in line is supply. And that's what Mark Waid did. He attacked the supplier. He called up Antarctic Press and said the same thing that they were saying to the comic pros. They were saying, hey, guess what? If anybody who works for you ever wishes to get into comics, you better stop dealing with these people. So they went to cut off the supply. And as I was saying in one of my other videos, I'm firmly of the mind that the left is so annoyed with Mark Waid, not because he did this, but because he tipped their hand, because they were going to do this anyways. They were just going to do it in a more subtle way. So they lost control of supply to some extent there. And I don't know how much this is actually going to play out, because it still hasn't played out completely. Everybody says that Diamond will publish anybody. They don't care. Richard Meyer is saying he's going to put everything through Diamond, and he's going to have supply there. Now, I'm hoping that's the case, but we still have to see, because he still hasn't been able to, I don't think, get anything published by Diamond yet. So we still have to see about that. We'll still have to see about the supply. But if they lose control of that as well, guess who the next people in line are to attack? Well, the next people in line to attack are the distributors. And again, we've already seen a little bit of that with the distributors bullying each other, trying to collude to make sure that they only have certain kind of comics in their stores. And there's even a pending possible court case on this, which would impact the industry a lot. So there's already internal bullying, internal shaming, to try to get these people who own comic shops to act in a certain way. It's already started. But if the industry has, and it has, lost control of A, the narrative that there is no demand, B, they've lost control of manufacturing to some degree, C, they lose control of supply, then the next person in line to move on to, because again, they want to move as quickly and unexpectedly as possible from one attack to another so that they can get their way. Then the next person in line to attack is the distributor. And the distributor is the comic shops. And they are going to be the ones being attacked soon. If Diamond is okay with publishing anything, if there's a good supply chain ready and the SJWs and the industry can't kill it, then the next people in line are going to be the comic shops to be attacked severely and unexpectedly, and all of a sudden just a blitzkrieg is going to hit them. And they're not prepared for that, because they think these people are on their side. They think that they're on the left, so they're the same as me, and they're not going to attack me. But they don't understand that they're going to be the ones that are going to get hit really badly. I think that soon a lot more comic shops are going to be going out of business. Unless, of course, they cut off ties and start doing things purely economically. One of those things that they could do, which I don't see happening, perhaps it is out there, I don't see it out there, but is to start, I would start a system whereby all the comic shops were connected and online, and putting right online their numbers for what they ordered and how many they sold, so that they can know economically and share with each other information as to what's selling and what's not. That would, of course, destroy the leftist narrative further that there is no demand or that there is a demand for their stuff. So I'm sure they're a little bit hesitant of doing so, and they should be hesitant in doing so because they're going to get attacked from that as well. But at the very least, they're getting attacked for something that is going to help preserve their business, as a good economic move. Something like that would work well. But we're going to have to see whether or not these people who own comic shops can indeed put their politics aside and concentrate on their business, or whether they're going to allow their business to die because of their politics. And I hope not, but I think that a lot of them are going to die. And this has already started coming. This whole thing with books only in Wal-Mart that DC is putting out, that comic shops will not be able to get them. They're only going to go to Wal-Mart. That's a little subtle move on the part of the industry to control the distributor. They're saying, hey, we can distribute without you, so you better do what we say. Again, this is the same thing they said to the artists, same things that they said to the suppliers. They're going and saying the same thing to the comic shops now. Hey, do what we say, or you won't get these books. That's what the whole thing with Walmart is allowing the industry to do. Now, I'd like to do a video on that whole Walmart situation because I can see some good in it, I can see some bad in it, but I can see certainly the industry using it to clobber the little comic shops over the head with their own ideology and take these books. You better get these books. And again, I ran across something a couple of days ago where if anyone wants to put in the comments, if they have more information about this, about some comic shops only being able to get certain comics with certain covers if they order a certain number of other ones. So in order to even fulfill their pull list, they're having to order more comics than they want in order to supply their people who are in the store with their pull list with certain covers. And again, that's not good economics, but it looks good for the industry. It looks like they're having a lot of sales when it's not a lot of sales, but it's just a lot of distribution, and it's crafty distribution, not distribution because of supply and demand. So anyway, I think we should all be prepared for our local comic shops to shut down because they're going to be the next in line to be attacked. And I think that we should also be prepared to stand at the cash register in a local comic shop when it starts to go under and say, listen, all you got to do is stop pandering to these people. Do good economics. It's boring. I know it's boring. Trust me, it's boring. But you got to put everything else aside and just look at it as a business, and that's it. Get rid of all this junk. And that's, you can just say, this is my personal opinion. And when you're talking to your local comic shop owner, say, this is a good business move to get rid of all of this other stuff in your store because you're driving away some people with that. And they might get upset with you, they might not. But it might save their business. Anyway, again, I have gone a little bit too far over time. I try to keep these things to at least under 20 minutes, but I never seem to be able to. I am hoping to expand more upon this ideas in our comic shops, and I have more videos, especially about the Wal-Mart situation, all these other things stuck in my head if I have the time to get them up and running. Thank you all for staying here for more than 20 minutes and listen to me. And hit like, hit subscribe if any of this is even remotely interesting to you. I'd like to know. And the like button is a great way for you to show me that you actually are not just clicking on this and then dropping off, but actually listening and let me know that what I'm saying is actually, at the very least, interesting. Getting some new ideas out there. And leave comments, as many as you want. I love comments. It's great. Share my videos. That's also great. I love all these things that everybody's doing for me just because we're trying to get these new ideas out there. All right. I'll see you later. Bye.